सर्वेभ्यः नमस्काराः। अत्रत्य IIT मद्रास् इत्यस्याः संस्थायाः आश्रये कार्यं कुर्वाणायाः संस्कृतसमितेः आश्रये कुमारसम्भव पाठं वयं कुर्वन्तः स्मः। अत्र पञ्चमः सर्गः अद्य आरभ्यते। कण्ठविषये मीरायाः काचित् समस्या अस्ति इति कारणात् सा अस्मिन् दिने गातुं न शक्ता। एवं वयम् आरभामहे। वागर्थाविव सम्पृक्तौ वागर्थप्रतिपत्तये जगतः पितरौ वन्दे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ। As Meera has some problem with her throat today, she is not able to sing. We are starting the 5th canto of Kumarasambhava. This is one of the most beautiful cantos of Kalidasa's work, Kumarasambhava, and in the whole corpus of Kalidasa, this is one of the most beautiful pieces. So this contains some 86 verses, and in this are described the tapas of Parvati. So Parvati performs tapas and Shiva is pleased with the tapas and he appears before her, and they are to marry. So in Canto 6 we see the negotiations for the marriage of Parvati and Shiva. So in this saga, the most interesting portion is the tapas of Parvati and the way Lord Shiva appears before Parvati as a brahmacharin and tests her tapas and her convictions. So that becomes the very interesting portion. The first verse runs like this: Tatha samaksham dahata manobhavam pinakina bhagna manoratha sati nininda rupam hridayena Parvati priyeshu saubhagya phalahi charuta. So Parvati has seen right in front of her eyes, samaksham, how Lord Shiva burnt Manmatha. So manobhavam dahata. In that manner, tatha, it all happened, it all transpired in just a fraction of a second. So had it been the case that Parvati had only come to know of this through some reports, through her friend, some second-hand information, the situation would have been different. On the other hand, when Parvati has seen with her very eyes how Lord Shiva burnt Manmatha, then it was a settled thing in her mind now that all her beauty was going to be of no use. Because at the moment Parvati made the offering of the garland of lotus seeds, Shiva looked at Parvati, and it was that very moment that was chosen by Manmatha to discharge his arrow, Sammohanastra. And as Kalidasa says, Shiva did look at her Parvati and even towards her lips. So his glance was drawn. So Vyaparayamasa Vilochanani, as Kalidasa says. So हरस्तु किंचित् परिलुप्तधैर्यश्चन्द्रोदयारम्भ इवाम्बुराशिः उमामुखे बिम्बफलाधरोष्ठे व्यापारयामास विलोचनानि. So towards the face of Parvati and even towards her lips, which resembled the bimba of fruit, the glance of Shiva was drawn for a moment. So it is not that Shiva had not even just cared to take a look at the beauty of the face of Parvati, and the lips, the most attractive portion of the face, even that had been looked at by him for but a fraction of a moment. And anyhow, now that such Shiva had reduced Manmatha to ashes, gave a very clear-cut confirmation to Parvati that her beauty was not going to be of great avail in drawing the mind of Shiva towards her. And therefore, Pinakina, so by Shiva, who was Manobhavam Dahata, who had burnt Manmatha, now on account of him, Parvati was utterly shattered in her ambitions. Bhagna Manoratha Sati. So Manoratha is ambition, and all her ambition was ruined now. So she thought that her beauty would one day or the other have an impact upon her. It's very natural for a person who has a great beauty and charm to be conscious of it. And sometimes people draw attention to that fact and people praise the beauty, and that emphasizes the presence of beauty in the person, and therefore the person will be conscious about the attractive features. And it should have been no different in the case of Parvati, that she too was confident of her beauty, that one day or the other it would cast its spell and charm the mind of Shiva. And therefore now Parvati was utterly frustrated regarding the futility of her beauty, and therefore she deprecated her beauty. Nininda Rupam. Rupam is beauty. Rupa on other occasions means mere form also. Here she is deprecating her own beauty. So it is of no use. She is very clearly aware now. So she is reprehending her beauty. Nininda Rupam Hridayana, heartily. So Parvati, and Kalidasa takes this occasion to make a remark, a general remark, saying, Priyesha Saubhagya Phalahi Charuta. He says, Charuta or beauty has as its fruit, phala, which must have the saubhagya of the Priya. Saubhagyam Priya Vallabhyam, says Malinatha, and therefore you should win the love and admiration. Saubhagya is winning the admiration of those who are very dear to us, Priya. So Priyeshu Saubhagya Phalahi Charuta. So what is the use of beauty if it does not win the admiration of the ones that we love? And therefore, in the case of Parvati, she desperately wanted to marry Shiva, and if all her beauty amounts to nothing in front of him, then what is the use of that beauty? So that beauty is a waste. Charuta Priyeshu Saubhagya Phala. So elsewhere, in a future canto, Kalidasa says, Strinam Priyaloka Phalohi Veshaha. In the case of women, especially, they dress, and when they dress themselves up very well, they would be happy and satisfied only when the person whom they admire the most comes to admire their dress and their appearance and their look and so on. On the other hand, if that does not happen, it will be a great disappointment for them. And therefore, Parvati was supremely disappointed now because her beauty did not charm Shiva. Actually speaking, beauty is of two sorts, external and internal. While it is not accompanied by internal beauty also, the mere external beauty will not have a great or deep effect, especially in the case of persons like Lord Shiva. And therefore, it is towards the internal beauty that one must pay attention. And it is also possible that there was a tinge of either overconfidence or a small sense of pride in the case of Parvati regarding her beauty. Though she is herself divinity incarnate, still the poet portrays even divinities with a human touch and tinge so as to serve as veritable models for us. So, in the case of Shiva and Parvati, the ideal couple, there should certainly be no need to present Parvati as a person having some pride as a dosha. So, there is no dosha that can also not become a guna under appropriate circumstances. So, gunas can become doshas and doshas can become gunas depending upon the circumstances, and therefore even a healthy pride can sometimes be a positive thing, and on the just as healthy competition is indeed positively useful. So even so, in the case of Parvati, it was almost bordering on a negative aspect, in the sense that she must have thought that her form and appearance alone can cast its spell upon Lord Shiva. That was not to be the case. So, to approach the purest of the Lords, so she must also be extremely pure. And it is only to serve as a model for us who are full of the very many drawbacks and flaws and discrepancies in our person. So, having so many doshas, so not merely mada, but also vatsarya, but also kama, krodha, lobha, moha, and so on. So, in order to serve as a model, so great poets describe even divinities as endowed with human failings and shortcomings, and even so, here Parvati is presented as a person like any one of us, having a sense of pride in the physical beauty and failing consequently in the case of handling Lord Shiva. And therefore, she heartily reprehended her charm, her beauty. Nininda rupam hridayena Parvati priyesha sobhagya phalahi charuta. Now, were it the case of a person of lesser sense, then the person would have come to hate her own beauty. And sometimes there are persons who think that as the beauty has not really served its purpose, it's of no use, and therefore they may harm themselves or even harm their beauty and so on. That is not to be the case with Parvati. On the other hand, she thought that she must make up for what is lacking in her beauty, so that beauty can now become really very effective. ईयेष सा कृत्तम अवन्ध्यरूपतां समाधिमास्थाय तपोभिरात्मनः अवाप्यते वा कथमन्यथा द्वयं तथाविधं प्रेमपतिश्च तादृशः. Sa Yesha means she desired, Parvati desired. So, what did she want now? Kartum Avandhya Rupatam or Avandhya Kamatam. There are two readings. So, she wanted to make her Rupa Avandhya. In Sanskrit, Vandya and Vandhya are two different words. So, with just the change in aspiration, the meaning becomes totally different. Vandya means a person who is fit to be worshipped. So, Vandaniya and Vandya mean the same thing. So, one who is fit to be saluted, fit to be honored and worshipped is Vandya. On the other hand, Vandya means barren. So, that which is sterile, so which is useless. So, Avandhya, on the other hand, has the force of negating the negative, and therefore it becomes a strong positive. In Sanskrit, there is a saying, Dvau Nayau Prakritartham Dradhayataha. So, two negatives make for one very strong positive, and therefore Avandhya means that which never fails. Avandhya Rupatam Kartum Sa Yesha. So in English also we have this figure of speech called litotis. So where also we have a sort of a double negation. So when you want to say so and so is a very great poet, so sometimes we say Shakespeare is a poet of no mean order. So mean is something negative, no mean order. So the figure of speech in such cases is called litotes. So in Sanskrit also we say advitiya. So he is second to none, as we say in English. So in such cases, it means something very positive, and therefore Parvati wanted her Rupa to be indeed Avandhya, indeed very fruitful. So what bears fruit, so is Avandhya. What is not a waste is Avandhya. What really serves the purpose it is designed for is Avandhya. And therefore, that is what Parvati wants to achieve now. So rather than insulting her beauty or damaging her beauty or whatever, so she now wants to make it be really fruitful. Avandhya rupatam kartum sa yesha. So her beauty was in a state which would not give her the effect that was desired, namely drawing the attention of Shiva and drawing him strongly towards herself. That is not to happen thus far, and hereafter Parvati would do something which would really make her beauty fruitful. And what is that? That is to be done. Samadhi masthaya tapobhiratmanaha. Atmanaha tapobhihi. With her tapas, samadhi masthaya. So being stationed in the state of samadhi. Asthaya means being stationed in. Samadhi masthaya tapobhiratmanaha. Atmanaha tapobhihi, with her own tapas. Tapas is not something that can be delegated to others. So it is something that one has to perform oneself. So we cannot have a surrogate tapasvin. On the other hand, it is something that we have to do by ourselves. So Kalidasa says, in this context, well, Parvati had to pay this price in order to get what she wanted to get. What she wanted to get was something extraordinary, and therefore, in order to get something extraordinary, efforts extraordinary must also need to be put. There is a saying in English, he who wants pearls must dive deep. So otherwise we have to be content with the small things that we may get on the surface of the sea. And it is only those who need to get the pearls which are deep down in the sea. So one has to dive deep and take all the trouble to go to the spot and reach for them. So if we take no pains, we will have no gains. Therefore we must sweat and get. And therefore Parvati now decided to perform tapas. Atmanaha tapobhihi samadhim asthaya. Samadhi, as we have seen, is the highest state of tapas, highest state of yoga. Yoga consists of 8 steps, so it's called Ashtanga Yoga. So Anga means limb. Though it is spoken of as having 8 limbs, in fact it consists of 8 steps. So the highest samadhi can be actually called the Angin, and the remaining ones are the Angas. But when you take up yoga as a whole, even samadhi, the highest, can be spoken of as an Anga. And the 8 steps are Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. So these are the 8 steps. The first 2, Yama and Niyama, pertain to the general culture that one must practice in order to be able to get the full benefit of the various further steps. So without the positive achievement in the preliminary first 2 steps, the other things may not be very helpful, in the sense they will not impart the full benefit that a person is expected to, or the person hopes to achieve. On the other hand, it is also equally true that progress in any one of these limbs will help progress in all other limbs also. That is to say, a person who is very good in asana and pranayama will also naturally be more inclined towards the cultivation of yama and niyama. and a person who has a good sense of yama and niyama will be more easily drawn towards the performance of asana, pranayama, etc. And therefore, every step of yoga is conducive to every other step of yoga. So, to all other steps involved in yoga, and therefore, in a way, one may start wherever one can find himself at ease. But on the other hand, it's also true that there is a proper procedure and there are sequential steps which sequence must also be adhered to. That is why we find in the Upanishads stories where the Guru asks the Shishya to just do what he says, and all that he says is some preliminary duties of his ashrama, and so on and so forth. So, in the beginning, all that looks meaningless, but however, they add to the whole, and therefore, in some way, they are conducive to the final attainment, and therefore, these are insisted upon. So then, Parvati was now bent upon making her beauty fruitful. So sometimes when we feel that we do not have adequate means, we must change the goal itself. On the other hand, Parvati did not think of changing her goal. So her aim was set on the highest, and therefore, in order to attain the highest, she was prepared to pay the price. So it's only when we feel diffident about our ability to take the trouble, so or when we don't want to take so much of trouble, that we need to change the goal, or that we tend to change the goal. But on the other hand, for persons who are very clear, so Parvati had a very strong conviction about marrying Shiva and Shiva alone, and none else than Shiva, and therefore, as she was very determined regarding that, so her determination was backed by thorough clarity and deep conviction, and that is why that determination could abide. And therefore, because she had this degree of clarity in what she was to achieve, that she determined to pay the due price for it, and therefore, tapobhihi samadhim asthai. The word tapas and samadhi are used sometimes in an equivalent manner as mutually exchangeable words. In this very canto, we get 2 more or 3 more occasions where the word samadhi is used, and in all those cases, it is used in a very general sense as the equivalent of tapas in general. So, sometimes technical words will be used in a general sense, and even general words would be used in a technical sense, depending upon the context. Sometimes the exigencies of the meter, as they call it as metri causa. So, on account of the reasons of the meter, sometimes a longer word or a more technical word is used to serve the purpose of another word which is more technically accurate, but the context is enough to solve and resolve the issue. And therefore, here she wanted to attain the highest state of concentration. Now, it is that which rectifies the shortcomings of our external beauty. And therefore, Kalidasa says, Avapyate va katham anyatha dvayam tatha vidham prema patishcha tadrishaha. Patishcha tadrishaha, a husband of that sort. So, a husband for whom there is no parallel. And therefore, as you see in the Bhagavad Gita, natvat samah abhidiko kutonyaha. So there is none who can be equal to you, and that being the case, who can even ever surpass you? And therefore, the Lord is unparalleled, patishcha tadrishaha, such a husband, and the love that he would impart is also something that is no parallel, and that is why there is no clear adjective that can be used to describe either the pati or the prema. Kalidasa only uses the pronominal expressions tadrishaha patihi tatha vidham prema. So love of that sort and a husband of that sort, because the word that cannot be explicated and cannot be shown in so many terms as to what exactly it is. It is something that has no parallel, and therefore it is something that cannot be explained in any language or by language at all. And therefore, what is beyond all explication and expression is something that is um, ineffable and cannot be expressed in words. And therefore, Kalidasa has used such expressions, tatha vidham prema patischitadasha. Sometimes we use in Sanskrit kopi or kimapi, so for what is inexpressible. Similarly, the pronominal expressions tadashaha and tathavidam are used here. Elsewhere, Kalidasa himself says, Premna harasyardha haram bhavitrim. In the opening sarga itself, it was mentioned that the love that she was going to attain with Lord Shiva was such that she would in fact occupy half the very person of Lord Shiva. So, in the case of lovers in the world, they may get very close, that's all. But in the case of Parvati, she became the very half of the person of Lord Shiva. So, this is also ultimately an indication that what was a bit apart from the divinity can now become totally united with the divinity, inseparably united with the divinity. So that is the case of all jivas. So we are afar from the Lord Supreme with whom we were, so with whom we were or with whom we were identified. So in either case, Sayujya is a state where there is supreme union and supreme identity. In fact, Mukti is defined as of 4 types, it's classified into 4. It's called Salokya, Samipya, and Sarupya, and finally Sayujya. So Salokya is Samana Lokata, being in the same loka as the divinity is. For example, in the case of Vishnu Bhaktas, it is Vaikuntha Loka. In the case of Shiva Bhaktas, it is Kailasa. So this is the state wherein you reach the same loka. Now, if your tapas is of a higher quality, then you get samipya, so you get proximity. So it's not merely being in the same realm, but getting even closer. So that is samipya mukti. And if the tapas is of a still higher order, then one becomes very like, even physically comparable to the Supreme Lord. That is why we find, for example, even Jaya and Vijaya represented as having see 4 arms and so on and so forth. So those who cannot differentiate between the Paricharaka Devatas and the Supreme Devata, so may even get confused by the Murti of say Jaya or Vijaya when presented separately. So on the other hand, when it is with the Mula Murti, then we can differentiate between the two perhaps little more easily. However, in the Shastras, the difference between these Murtis are very clearly given. So when there is great proximity to the Lord, and there is also an enjoyment of the sweetness and beauty of the divinity, then one becomes comparable even physically to the very divinity that one is constantly contemplating upon. And therefore this becomes Sarupya Mukti when one comes to resemble the very Dhyaya Murti that one was contemplating upon. And the final one is Sayujya, when one attains full unity with the Supreme. So that may be a stage when the two cannot be differentiated at all. And therefore it is something similar here, namely Parvati performing tapas to make her beauty even more integral, and thus being really very desirable for Lord Shiva himself. Even as the Jiva longs for the company of Deva, so our Puranas represent even the Lord as longing for the company of Jiva. For example, in Gita Govinda, we find the representation of Lord Krishna himself longing for the company of Radha, and where there is a Parishuddha Jiva, so even the Lord himself deigns to get close to that Jiva and takes the trouble of coming to where the Jiva is. Even so, when Parvati performs her tapas and progresses in that very well, and all the impurities are totally ridden, so from her personality, so all the doshas are all now removed. There is no dross that remains. It becomes extremely pure. Then Lord Shiva himself arrives to where Parvati is, and that is how the divinity is also attracted towards the individual self, and therefore Kalidasa says, Avapyate va katham anyatha dvayam. Parvati is attaining two things now. So one is the love that is incomparable, and a husband who is also incomparable. So there can be no husband who can be compared to Lord Shiva, and there can be no love that can be compared to the love that Lord Shiva can give. So in the Bhagavad Gita there is a remark saying he is Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. So the Lord is the friend of all, and it is that friendship which is the real friendship. So it is he who is endowed with a good and great heart, Suhrit, and therefore it is such a Sauhrida and such a Sauharda, that is what is desirable for every being. So nobody in the world loves to be alone. In fact, the Upanishads say even the Supreme Lord did not like it to be alone. So Saha na reme, says the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and therefore it says Atmanam dvedha apatayat. So the Supreme made itself into two portions, so the masculine and the feminine, and so on. And thus it is the ultimate goal of all jivas to be united with the Deva, also because all jivas are feminine compared to and with reference to the Deva, who alone is the Mahapurusha. And therefore it is very natural that Parvati should have thought of performing tapas and attain the goal which cannot be attained in any other manner. There is a saying in Sanskrit, actually occurs in Manusmriti, whatever is impossible to attain otherwise may be attained by tapas. Says Manu, yad dushkaram, yad durapam, yad durgam, yadcha dustaram, tat sarvam tapasa prapyam, or tat sarvam tapasa sadhyam, tapohi durati kramam. So tapas is something that is unsurpassable. So whatever is difficult to perform, yad dushkaram, whatever is difficult to attain, yad durapam, whatever is impenetrable, yad durgam, yadcha dustaram, what cannot be crossed over, tat sarvam tapasa prapyam. So all that is possible through tapas, tapo hidurati kramam. Tapas is something that can never be surpassed, and therefore it is through tapas that Parvati can make her fruitless form fruitful, and therefore she is now determined to perform tapas. So the performance of tapas is something that comes at a very high cost. So it's not something very easy. It's not a question of a certain simple discipline. So on the other hand, it has to go deep into the very recesses of the heart of a person, the inmost core of a being, and it is such a kind of tapas that is demanded for attaining this highest goal that is the most cherishable. I wanted to do this fifth canto in very great detail, but once again ideas have been changing. So I wanted to do even the grammar of Kumar Sambhavam of this portion at least in full detail. But requests have been coming for me to take up Mudra Rakshasa, to take up Krishna Karnamrita, to take up Gita Govinda, and so on. So I do not know how much time I can devote for each, and therefore I thought, because Kumar Sambhavam has been happening for quite some time, so let me finish this in a few lectures and then take up some other work. So, however, Some time ago, I had given some very detailed lectures on Kalidasa's Kumar Sambhavam. So, on this very canto, looking into almost all aspects of grammar that is involved. So, for example, especially the focus on the verbal forms. So, for example, we have Nininda here, it is from root Nind, and the form is in lit lakara. The forms are Nininda, Ninindatuhu, Nininduhu, etc., and so on. And taking care of every compound to be dissolved. So, Bhagna Manoratha, for example, qualifies Parvati, and therefore the dissolution of the compound would be Bhagnaha Manorathaha, Yasyaha Sa Bhagna Manoratha, and so on. So, parsing each and every word and analyzing every compound and so on. All this has been done by me. So, at the invitation of Indian Institute of Science a few years ago, and all that is available in the internet. So, for about something like some 30 shlokas or 40 shlokas, I have done in very great detail. So, I'll give the link next time, and there you can see that. I have not only written the text down shloka by shloka and explained it in sufficient detail, paying attention to every aspect of grammar that one may normally need to know. So I'll give the link in the next session. So this time we'll somewhat quickly go through this canto also. I will, however, not miss the cultural and spiritual aspects that are evident in this canto. So we have seen, for example, in the third canto how the tapas of Lord Shiva was described, and in this canto the tapas of Parvati is described. And as I had pointed out earlier, the tapas of Lord Shiva is that of a Siddha. So even a Siddha Purusha involves himself in tapas. So in a way, one can always ask the question, what does a Siddha Purusha, one who is fully accomplished? Siddha means to accomplish. Siddhu is to, Siddhu Samradhau is the root, and therefore Siddha is a person who has accomplished his goal. So, you see, there is this root Siddhi, and therefore Sadhana is the means, and Siddhi is the attainment. Siddha is one who has attained the goal, and the person who does this is sadhaka. So in the case of a siddha, no more is required his sadhana, and therefore one has reached the goal that is sufficient. So there is also a saying in the Brahma Sutras, for example, the last statement is nacha punaravartate, nacha punaravartate. He does not return to samsara, and therefore once a person has crossed samsara, there is no question of his getting involved once again in samsara, and therefore there is no question of this chakra or samsarana or samsara of being born again and being dead again and so on. This punarapijananam, punarpimaranam, this cycle is crossed once and for all. Now, if that is the case, if that is the natural state of the Supreme Lord, why does he involve in tapas? So Kalidasa himself says once again to escape answering the question. So some questions will not be answered, and therefore Kalidasa himself says, Kenapi kamena tapaschakara, with some end in view, with some desire in view, he performed tapas. So all persons who perform tapas, so do so with some end in view. In fact, that's what the brahmacharin, so who is none else than Shiva, in which disguise Lord Shiva himself has come. So he accosts Parvati, so with the question, so if you are doing tapas at this age, at a young age, there must be some desire, some end in view, otherwise nobody would forego all the pleasures of youth. And herself being a princess, so she had every opportunity to enjoy life, and therefore foregoing all those pleasures of life, if you are indulging in such deep tapas, so there must be some clear-cut goal which is in front of you, and towards which end you are striving and endeavoring. So may I ask what that goal is? That Shiva asks. So it is then that it is explicated that she wants to marry Shiva and so on. So the purpose and the goal of Parvati's tapas is very clear. What is the purpose and goal of Lord Shiva's tapas? Now, a similar question is put to the Buddha also. So, why do you want to follow discipline? So, the Buddha is asked by his disciples because they are puzzled that he follows all rules of discipline, whereas there is no need for him to do that because he is already Buddha. So, earlier he was merely Gautama. So, that is the name that was given when he was born. Now he became the Buddha. The Buddha means one who is awake. So we are all asleep. So even though we are physically awake, so spiritually we are sleeping. And therefore the person who is spiritually awake is truly awake. So it is in order to emphasize that the Sanskrit word Buddha has been used. And therefore compared to one who is truly awake, so all others are asleep. Of course, this idea of a person being awake while all others are asleep is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself long before the Buddha. So, Yanisha Sarvabhutanam Tasyam Jagratya Sanyami. So, this is very clearly stated there. And therefore, the Sanyamin is a person who has supreme self-control. So, as we have seen earlier, Yama itself means control. And Yamin is the same as a Yati. So, even the word Yata, Sai, Yata, Yati, all these words are derived from root Yamun, and therefore it means to control. The person of supreme self-control is the Sanyamin. So he is awake when all are asleep. So there it does not imply that the Sanyamin is a mere nocturnal creature and therefore that he is awake when all are asleep, and therefore that is not the physical sleep that is described. On the other hand, it is the spiritual awakening that is referred to in such context, and therefore the Buddha is the person who is awake. He is called the Buddha and not just Buddha because the word Buddha is an adjective, it's an epithet given to him. And he himself says that there have been several Buddhas prior to him and that he is a 24th Buddha. So that's what he says, and therefore we always refer to him as Gautama the Buddha. So the expression the Buddha refers to the person who is awake. So the Buddha is thus a person who is awake, and for him there is no question of falling once again into this whirlpool of samsara. And so a disciple asks him, so with full wonderment, why he is himself meticulous in all his disciplinary activities. So one easy answer could be that he was like that only to serve as a model for all others. And if he himself shows slackness, then others would easily take that as something that what their own guru or leader is doing, and therefore they can also take liberties and therefore they can become slack in their discipline. On the other hand, what the Buddha says is that earlier I used to follow the discipline and now the discipline follows me. That is to say, he cannot act but otherwise. If those rules are devised, taking into account the need of a true health or true and full health of a being, they become the natural elements of one's life. And therefore, in the case of the Buddha, those things which were prescribed as rules of discipline to be followed by the disciples, they become the most fruitful in his case, and they also become the natural things for him. In fact, they are the natural efflorescence of a full state of tapas, and a person would not like to lose his high state, so he would not like to slip from the high state by not adhering to the discipline. Only it does not involve as much conscious effort as it demands in the case of a beginning aspirate, a sadhaka at his early stages. So for such a person, a great deal of effort and endeavor is required. In fact, every ashrama demands its own discipline. Nowadays, the knowledge of students regarding ashramas is so poor that once when it was asked what are the 4 ashramas, so the students replied, so it is Ramakrishna Ashrama, another student said Vriddha Ashrama, another student said Anath Ashrama, and another student came with Avalashrama. So these are not the four ashramas. On the other hand, the four ashramas, Brahmacharya ashrama, Grihastha ashrama, and then Vanaprastha ashrama and Sannyasa ashrama, all these involve the element of a certain shrama, that is to say, a certain discipline and an endeavor. So, in order to properly conform to that ashrama, so one has to undergo a certain discipline that is prescribed for that particular ashrama, and therefore nothing is easily achieved and attained. So, in the Vedas, it is very clearly said that even the gods themselves attain to the supreme goal. So they sought the supreme through tapas and through shrama. Anvaichan devas tapasa shramena. So it is only through tapas and shrama. In fact, tapas itself is a form of shrama, but the two are also separately mentioned because it is shrama that qualifies tapas, and so one has to struggle and work hard and conform to what exactly constitute tapas. And therefore, even in the case of Lord Shiva, if he performs tapas, it is because it is a natural state for him to be in that state, and therefore it's something that naturally comes to him. And so then Shiva would himself like to dwell at least for some time in that state. So, and on the other hand, it is also the case that even when he is engaged in other activities and apparently absorbed in other activities, even then, so he does not forsake his state of samadhi or the supreme state of tapas. And therefore, how to act, engage oneself in worldly activities in spite of being in that highest state is what is taught by the stories of persons like Lord Krishna and Lord Shiva. So this is an important secret of nature, and therefore Parvati now wanted to attain such a husband and such a love, the parallel for which can nowhere be in the world, and from nowhere else can that be obtained. And therefore Kalidasa says, Avapyate tat katham anyatha. How can that be so attained elsewhere in any other mode? So we have to pay the price for that, and we can get it. So he who wants to attain the supreme must first deserve the supreme, and therefore for the sake of that one must put forth the requisite effort in the right manner. And therefore Parvati decided to perform tapas. Through tapas and samadhi, so Parvati wanted to attain the supreme goal. Just as we spoke of the state of the Buddha as a person who is awake, of course the counterpart for that in the Indian yogic terminology is being in the state of Turiya or Turya, the fourth state as it is called. There are four states: Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti and Turiya. The state of Turiya and the state of Samadhi are the same thing when one becomes one's own pure self, so rid of all associations and certainly rid of all impurities. And it is that which is the supreme endeavor of every being should be to attain that supreme goal. And therefore now Parvati wants to attain that supreme goal, and therefore tapobhihi samadhim asthaya. In this shloka, the word samadhi has been used not with the same rigor as the yogic terminology. Now, the counterpart of the Buddha there is the yogin in the state of Turiya or Samadhi. Of course, it is very difficult to say whether the state of the Buddha and the state of the yogin in the state of Samadhi are exactly the same. They need not be. So it's only a matter of experience, and it's only experience that can explicate the matter. On the other hand, it can be definitely taken that the state attained by the Buddha is certainly a state much superior to what all the states that common men in the world can aspire for or hope for or to attain. So it demanded a very high sacrifice, and he paid the full price for it. And being in the midst of the greatest of pleasures of life, he had abandoned all those. So the same thing as it happened in the case of Parvati, herself a princess, so she forsook all pleasures of life. So, and there's also for some period. It is not that they are all lost once and for all. In the case of the Buddha, he gave them all because he was destined to be a teacher, and therefore there was no question of attaining a high state and coming back to a lower state, or more formally speaking, becoming a sannyasin and then getting back to garhasthya. In the case of Parvati, that was not the case. It is not that she had become a mendicant and a sannyasini and therefore could not return to garhasthya. A person who takes up sannyasa and comes back to garhasthya is called arudha patita, and therefore it is in such a person it becomes a veritable dosha, and therefore in the case of the Buddha there is no question of he returned to garhasthya, and therefore he remained in the state as a sort of a parivrajaka and moved about, imparting the teaching that he had to. And coming back to the same issue, the state of samadhi and the state of Buddhahood need not be the same, and apparently the state of samadhi is much higher than the state attained by the Buddha, and for our purposes the two can be more or less the same, because even attaining the state of the Buddha may itself be something that's not easily thinkable for us ordinary mortals and persons who are too deeply involved in samsaric circles. So on the other hand, in the very word samadhi, there is a clear indication of what constitutes the true being. So it can be seen, the word samadhi, by going by the analysis of the word, it can be seen that it is formed of sam plus a plus root dha. So root dha is to place, and adhana is also meaning to place. So, and sam is to bring together the various things that need to be brought together. So samadhana is where all our faculties are properly integrated, and this state of samadhi, this is in fact in the Vyasa's commentary on Yoga Sutra. So the state of yoga itself is explained as samadhi, yogaha samadhihi. So yoga literally ultimately means samadhi. So, and the word samadhi is also explained as samadhanam. So samadhana and samadhi are exact synonyms, and we can derive a corollary from this, that whatever is not samadhi, so the opposite of that is replacing sam by the upasarga vi. We get the word vi plus a plus dhi becomes vyadhi, and therefore all illness is being in a state which is not samadhi, or which is not informed by the state of samadhi. So empowered by the state of samadhi, by the attainment of the state of samadhi, one can be in the other states also and can still be in that state. And when that is not known, when that has not been attained, so all that we are, howsoever healthy apparently we are still in a state of vyadhi. So just as in the case of the Buddha, the person who has really become awake is the Buddha, and all other are nidrana, so who are in a state of sleep. So even so, the person who has attained the state of samadhi is the truly healthy being, and all others being the state of vyadhi or a sort of illness. And that's why the Upanishads, in the Upanishads and in Yoga Shastra especially, the state of samadhi is called sahajavastha. It is the most natural state, natural condition, and what we are is all an aberration, and it is to in order to hearken us to that state that all the Shastras endeavor and they strive to remind us of our original home, from where we have strayed into the most useless and trivial things, and therefore it is to hark us back to that original state of ourselves. So that true state of ourselves, that original home and abode that all the Shastras endeavor. And therefore it was very natural for Parvati, who was none but Dakshayani, the consort of Lord Shiva himself earlier in a previous birth, to long for the extraordinary company of Lord Shiva. So, compared to which all other pleasures of life are trivial. So, all other pleasures of life can become enjoyable provided this love is assured. And once this love is missed, so all other things become really trivial things. So that happens, for example, in the case of supreme love, as for example between Radha and Krishna. So when she is separated from Lord Krishna, she says, so her beautiful, see, there is a beautiful description in the Gita Govinda of her condition, where it said, Avaso vipinayate priyasakhi malapi jalayate तापो निश्वसितेन दावदहन ज्वाला कलापायते सापित्वद्विरहेण हंत हरिणी रूपायते हा कथम कंदर्पोपि यमायते विरचयन् शार्दूल विक्रीडितम. This shloka itself is composed in the Shardula Vikridita meter, and therefore there is what is called Mudra Alankara, because that very word has been used in the shloka. He says, for Radha, her dwelling was as though it was but a forest. So, avasaha vipinayate. Elsewhere in the Bhagavata, it is said that their bhavana had become comparable to a vana. So, here the same is paraphrased slightly differently, saying avaso vipinayate. In the separation from Krishna, the Gopikas felt that it was as unbearable as being in the midst of being lost in a forest rather than being at home in their residence. So, avaso vipinayate, priyasakhi malapi jalayate, and even the circle of her friends looked like but a network that from which she needed to escape. Priyasakhi malapi jalayate, tapo nishvasitena davadhana jwala kalapayate, and the hot sighs that were being released from her nose, so they looked like the fire in the sea, the submarine fire. Davadahana jwala kalapayate sapitvadvirahena. So the Sakhi of Radha is describing to Lord Krishna the condition of Radha. Tadvirahena, on account of separation from you. Hanta harini rupayate hakatham. She is now like a deer full of fear. And Kandarpopi yamayate virachayan shardula vikrididam. And Cupid, Manmatha himself, he is as though functioning like Yama himself. So, the very Lord of Death, Kandarpopi Yamayate Virachayan Shardula Vikreditam, as he is as a tiger towards this deer, so namely Radha, and so on. So, that way, all things pleasurable. So, who would not like to be in the circle of friends? Who would like to be lost in a forest, and so on? And therefore, the most pleasurable things become hardly enjoyable when that love is missed, when that supreme love is missed. So, even in the worldly life, when we miss our lover or miss the love of the lover, then all things tend to become a waste, and even sweet things become very bitter in the absence of the person who loves us truly or whom we love truly. And even so here in the case of Parvati, so it was very natural, very natural urge for her who was in the company of Lord Shiva in her previous birth, to once again long for that company, because even if one is not consciously aware, in the innermost recesses of one's own being, the pleasure of the company of the Lord Supreme is never to be forgotten. And therefore, Parvati very naturally was inclined to pay any price that it demanded in order to attain to the company of Lord Shiva, and therefore she would not mind the highest sacrifices to attain Lord Shiva. And that's why Kalidasa befittingly says, Avapyate va katham anyatha dhruvam tatha vidham prema patischata drishaha. So, how can the two be attained? So, we shall go to the next verse in our next session. Namas sarvebhyah. Namaskaraha.